So in this last video, we just finished setting up. So we migrated that in that video. Before that, we created our Django admin panel. So it's right here. So we have our user and we want to start actually modeling this data. So the first thing we are going to work with is going to be this product model here. So we also need to work with the user model also. But because this is built in already with Django, all we need to do is import this and let's build out this model. So to import this user model, we are just going to go into backend, into base of our project. So within our app, and we want to import the user model here. This is going to be from django.contrib.auth dot models, and we just need to import users. So that's going to be with a capital U, and we just imported the user model or class, whatever you want to call that, but it is officially a model. So to create our first model, all we need to do is create a class. We need to give it a name. So we are going to call this one product, and as a parameter we need to pass in models dot model. So this will turn our class into a model. So now Django understands what this is. So what I am going to do is I am going to write out the attributes first, and then we will actually set the real values to them. So we'll start with username, image, and brand. So name and last one is brand. Okay, image and brand. So we'll set those up and let's go to the rest. Category, description, rating, number views, price. So we have category, we have description, and we have rating. So we have price, count in a stock or create at. So this is going to be number of views, number of reviews. That's going to be with the capital R. Then we have price count in a stock. So capital I and S over there, and then create it at with a capital A. So the last one I will add here is going to be the ID. So by default, Django already creates an ID, but because I am using uh, this course as a special, so I am remarking this, and in the front end we already used the underscore ID for the product. So if we go into our products array or our product list, we are already using this method. So I don't want to have to rewrite things in the front end. So what I am just going to do is underscore ID, and we are just going to override that value. So instead of the ID without the underscore, we are now going to get it. So the only model that's not going to have this underscore is the user. It already has it and I'm not changing it. So let's go ahead and actually set the values to all of these fields. So the first thing I want to do is actually want to comment out image. And the reason why we are doing this, because image is something that I want to take care of in a later video, because we need to set up the file uploading system. So for now, when we are creating the model, we are going to create it without the image, and then we'll customize that later. So let's go ahead and work with this user attribute. So this is going to be what sets a relationship to this user model here. And so remember, a user can have multiple models, multiple products. So for this, we need to create a one-to-many relationship, and we'll just do models. And to create that relationship, we are just going to do foreign key. And in foreign key, we just need to specify the model that we want to set the relationship to. Now this creates the relationship to this user. So pretty easy to make that connection. So the next thing I want to do is set the on delete value. So for this, we are just going to set this to models dot uh, set underscore null. So what this means is we can actually set this to where whenever a user that created this product uh, gets deleted. So let's say a user created three products in our database, and then let's say that user that was an employee at the company and they got fired. I don't want to have that product get deleted just because that employee is no longer there and we deleted their account. So in this case, I just want to set the product to null, so we no longer have that employee and we don't want to actually delete the child elements if the parents gets deleted. So for this, we are just going to set that to null to just make sure that never happens. And then we actually want to set the value for if we are going to allow this attribute to be empty uh, in the database. So in theory, I'm okay with creating a product in the database without a user, and so we are going to set that to null, and that is going to be it for user. So let's go into name. So name is going to be models dot, and then this is just going to be a string. So we are going to do char field, and for this we need to give it the attribute of max length, and I will just set that to 200. We should not have a product with that with a name longer than that, and I'm going to set null to true, and these values can be updated, but I want to set these uh, here. So when I am creating dummy data, I don't want to have to fill everything out. So we'll also set blank to true to So this just means that we can fill out a form and not have to have this element completed or this attribute filled out. So let's go into, let's copy this. So let's go into this, and I just want to go ahead and fill out any other field that has this. So I don't have to retype this. So for the category, that's also going to be a character field. For brand, and let's see for brand also, and I think that's it. So those are the only values that are going to use this character field. So for description, this is going to be also a string, but this needs to be a longer string. So we are going to set this to models, and then this is going to be dot text uh, field. So that just means that we can write out a longer field. And so if this was in a form, the box would be a lot bigger. Just because it's a text field, and the description could be multiple paragraphs. So we want to allow that. So let's just set null to true, and I'm going to use this as a default value. And then we are also going to set blank to true. And for the rating, we can just set this to a decimal field. So we'll just do models.decimal field, and this takes in two required parameters. So for the first one, it's going to be the max digits we want to allow, and I want this to be a big number, or at least not really have a limit. So 7 should do. That's going to be a pretty large number for the amount of digits. And we also want to set the decimal places that we want to allow. So this is going to be the decimal places after the whole number, and I just want to be able to allow 2. I think that's going to be okay for now, and let's just go ahead and do the number of reviews. So for this, actually I want to set price to a decimal field 2, and for number of reviews, and we will just set that to models dot integer field. So we just want to make this an integer, or an integer if I am saying that right, and let's just take in the defaults there is no required parameters there, and let's say for the number of reviews, let's actually create a default value. So this is going to be what the default value is when we create the item. So right away, I guess we want to start with 0. That looks more accurate. And for the count in stock, let's do the same thing. We'll use the integer field, and we'll also set the default value to 0. So when we first create it, until a user actually sets the count, I want to leave that as 0. So for created app, we are going to use the date time field, and this is just going to uh, make it to where we get a snapshot of when this product was created. So we'll just do models dot date time field, and to actually make it to where we get a screenshot, or a or a snapshot of the date time. So what we want to do is we want to say auto underscore now underscore add, and this value is going to be set to true. What's going on here is if we didn't set this, we would just have this field and then we would have to set a date time every time we create it. But in this case, we only want created at to take a snapshot of when the product was first created. So by default, if we created it right now, it would take a snapshot of the date of the time and set it because we have auto now and set to true now for the ID. Remember, we are just going to override the default ID here, and for this we are just going to do models dot auto field, and we are just going to set this to primary key. So we are just going to, once we set it to primary key, this is going to tell Django to use this as the ID instead of what it originally wanted. And we are also going to set editable to false. We don't want anyone to be able to edit this field, because if we do, it's going to start uh, conflicting with our database, and that's going to give us issues. So what I want to do next is actually register this, make some migrations, and show you what this product looks like in the admin panel. And before we do that, I just realized this should be set to true. I thought I already said that, and I also want to allow null and blank for decimal places. So let's just add a comma here. We'll paste that in and our other decimal places. So I want to be able to leave these blank for now. So there is still a little bit more that we want to do with this as far as what we are doing to the model. But that's it for our attributes. So to actually add this, let's go ahead and run some migrations. So right now, if we go into the admin panel, let's go ahead and open that up. If we open that up, we are going to see that we don't actually have anything in the admin panel. So we need to first make the changes, and this is going to have to be done every time we make a change, okay, to the database. So let's turn off our server and we can just do python manage.py, and we are going to say make migrations. And when we run this, let's go ahead and open up the migrations folder. You are going to notice a file get added here. So let's go ahead and run that. I'm going to hit enter, and there we go. So we have our first migration. So this is prepping the database for changes here. So essentially this is just going to execute SQL commands, and it's going to start creating that table. So we just prepped it. And remember, when we run migrations after doing the first migration, it told us that we don't have any changes in the database. Well, right now because we make migration, now we can run uh, Python manage.py migrate, and it's going to apply those changes. So it's going to take everything in this migrations file, and it is going to apply these changes to the database. So if I hit that, there we go, and it says applying changes. It took the changes from this 001 base 001 initial migrations, and it added the table to the database. So this is not everything. We are still going to have to add a few more things. So right now in the admin panel, I guess I don't want to have to restart my server. The item or the table still will not be in the admin panel. So from models or from admin.py, let's go ahead and register it. So we can just do from dot models import in admin.py. So we'll just say product. So we can do dot right there because it sits in the same file as models.py. And let's go ahead and register that by doing admin.site.register. And we want to add the model. That we are going to register. So if I save this, let's go ahead and start up our server. So now in the admin panel, if I refresh it, there we go. So we have zero products, but the product is the product table is registered, and we can actually add something here. So let's go ahead and actually add a product. So we'll connect it to the first user, and then the name of the product will go into products.py. So we'll take in these AirPods wireless Bluetooth headphones, and we'll add that as the name, and we'll just give it the description. So we'll later on go through and add all these, but for now I just want to show you something quick here. And what was the price here? So we will not add every single attribute. So the price was 89.99, and then let's just set count in stock to 10. So we have the price 89.99. So here I will put 10. So when I save it, there we go. We have our first projects. Now you will notice that we are not actually getting the product name. So we want to set that, and we can just set the string value to the class for this. So for this I am going to close out products. We close out admin.py. Let's move this down and let's set the string value. We can do that under here as a method. So let's indent that, and we'll do underscore string. We'll pass in self, and for the return value. This is just a class, so you should be already familiar with this. If you are using Python here, And for this, let's just pass in the name of the product. So we will just do return self dot name. So we will save that, and now in my admin.py file I can now see the product name, so that looks a little bit better. So let's go ahead and move on to the next model. So for that we are going to go ahead and add the review model. At this point I am going to go through this a little bit faster because we have already used some of these fields. You are familiar with those, so we'll just do a lot of repeating here. So we'll create the class. This is going to be called review, and this is going to inherit from models.model. So remember, the second M here in model is capitalized, first one is not. So for the parameters here or the attributes, let's go ahead and write those out like we did before. And I will just actually fill out the fields second later. So let's just do product, and then the next one is going to be user. So these are going to be relationship fields. So we are going to connect this to the product model up here and then that imported user model. Then from here I want to get the name. So I want to be able to get a string value of the username. So we will just say name. Then after name I can do rating. So what's the rating? And this is going to be out of 5, and the actual comment. So when we are leaving a review, usually you leave some kind of message there, basically explaining your review. And the last thing I want to do is override that ID. So let's copy and paste this in and let's fill out. So for the product, I'm going to copy models.foreign key and I'm going to paste that in here. So instead of the user, we want the product model. So I'm going to copy this and we'll paste in the product model. So now we have a relationship to the product. So a user or a product can have a multiple reviews. Now for the user, I can actually copy and paste this directly. So we'll copy this. And we'll paste this in here. So a review needs a user. So we want to know who is leaving this review. And I'm okay with all of these settings right here. And for the same, this is just going to be a character field. So we are going to copy care field here. And we'll paste that here. So models.care field, and we'll set the length. Leave that there. And for the rating, what did I want this? I think I want this at as an integer. So we'll take an integer. So we'll take model.integer field, and by default I'm okay with leaving that at 0. And then in this case we'll make the user have at least a 1 star rating. but we would not let them save it unless we have some kind of rating. So for the comment, this is where we can reuse this text field. So we'll take that text field and this completes our user model. And for the return value, technically I don't really care to see this in the admin panel, but what I am going to do, and I will just write this out by hand. So we are going to create the indentation and we are just going to set the string value to, and I think I did, yeah, that's two underscores, and we'll pass in self and throw in that r, so self, and we are going to return back the rating. So we'll return, and the return value needs to be a string. So we are going to wrap that in a string function and we'll just do self dot rating. Make sure you do that because you will get an error in the admin panel if you don't wrap it this way. So that's it for our review model, and before we run the migrations, we will actually add in the rest of the models, and then that way we can run all of those migrations together without having to repeat it. So for the order model, that's going to be just below review, and when we are creating relationships, it does matter where we place the models. So if you are copying my same structure, make sure you are putting them exactly where I am placing them. So for the order model, we'll just set the class call this order, also going to inherit from models dot model, and for this we are also going to copy this user relationship here. So I'm actually just going to take this directly all the way to the attribute name, and then I am going to write out the attributes here. So for this we have, let's see, we have payment method, and that's going to be with a capital M, and then we have a tax price. So tax and then P will also be capitalized. So we are just going to camel case these, and then we are going to have our shipping price. Then we'll have our total price. So total, and after total price we'll just do is paid. So this is going to be a boolean value later on. So after is paid, then we want to know what the date was. So we want to take that snapshot paid at when the user paid for this. Then in the admin panel, we are going to want to be able to update is delivered, not as admin. So is delivered, And then we also want to know if we went or delivered it. So let's see. So we want to know if it is delivered, that's going to be set to true or false, and then delivered as delivered at with a capital A there, and I keep misspelling delivered. Let me correct it. I just need to do that. We have delivered at, and then we have created at. So when was this order created? And the last thing is the ID. So I'm just going to copy this right here. We'll paste that in here and let's fill out these. So for the payment method, this is going to be just a character field. So we'll just copy this, and that's going to be the payment method. So this is going to be like PayPal, Stripe, whatever we are paying with. And then let's see, I think that's the only string value. So let's go to the prices, and this we are just going to use the decimal field, and we are going to keep the same settings here. So we are going to do models dot decimal field, and we can paste this in for tax price, for shipping, and shipping price, total price, and then for paid at is paid. So these are going to be yes, let's see. So these are going to be boolean fields. And I just realized I don't think we have used that yet. So let's go ahead and just type these as, or let's type these out. So we'll just do is paid. This is going to be models dot boolean field and boolean this. Let's see what were the required parameters. So I think all we need to do is just set default, and for default we are just going to set that to false. So that's going to be is paid right way. So when it is created, it's not going to be true. So that's going to be false is delivered by default. I also want to use the boolean field, and that's going to be set to false. Now if we are delivered at, paid at, and created at, these are going to be using the auto or the date time field. So we are going to have to change up a few things here. So for paid at, we are going to paste that in, and we are going to set this to false. So we don't want this to change until we actually manually update this. So we also want to set null to true and blank to true. So we'll just say blank. That's going to be set to true, and I can use this value for delivered at. So also we want we don't want to update that until we actually update the value. And for create at, we are actually going to reuse the same value that we used before. So this is going to be set to true, and then we can take out blank to true. So that is for the attributes, and for the actual string value, let's go ahead and create that string value. So we are just going to create the function, and that's going to be string function, and we are going to pass in self again. And for the return value, we just want to pass in created as a return. And then we are just going to do the string, and I'm just going to do self dot created at. So we are going to wrap that in a string again, because the return value for this needs to be a string. So that's why we have to wrap it, and it will stringify this, and then we can actually see that in the admin panel. So after our order, we just need to create our order item model. So each order is going to have multiple order items, and these are going to be like your cart. Okay, cart items. So we are just going to do order item, and this is going to inherit from models dot model, and I will go through the attributes again. So models dot model, and in here we are going to need a product, and then we need to connect it to an order. These two will be relationships. So one will be a relationship to a product, and then another to an order. And then we want the name. So we are also going to get the string value of the product and throw that in here. So the name of the product here, and then we want to get the quantity, that will be QTY, and then after quantity we want price and image. So we are going to connect to the product image here. And finally the ID. So let's override the ID, and let's set these up just like we did before. Uh, where we can take this foreign key right here, and we'll paste that. Change this to product. So we want to know what the item product is, and for order I'm going to change this to order, and I'm also going to leave these default settings here. And for the name, this is just going to be a care field, so we'll copy that, paste that, and if this copying and pasting is too fast for you, just go to the source code. And I just don't want to be repeating the code and making the video way longer than it needs to be. So for the quantity, this is going to be an integer field. Let's see, where did we use that. Let's just go up here, and in the rating we will paste that into quantity. So the quantity also is going to be by default set to 0 for the price. For the price we need a decimal field, and for the image we are just going to add a URL to the image itself. So we are not actually going to upload an image. That's why we are going to leave this one as a character field as opposed to what we did up here uh, with a product. So we are just going to link to the URL. So for the price, we can do a decimal field again. We'll take that and paste that here. So for the actual string value, this is going to be an easy one. So we are just going to do underscore string here, pass in self again, and for this we don't need to wrap it in that. Actually, I will wrap it just in case it's blank. So because name is going to be a string, we can just do return self dot name, and we don't need to wrap. So it, because it already has a name, but just in case we forget to add that, we'll just do string, and then we are just going to get some kind of none value for the actual name of it. And so now we can move to shipping address, and so shipping address will go below the product or below the order item, and we will create that class. This is going to be shipping address, and we are going to capitalize the A here. So capitalize the A and S, and then pass in the default parameters. So models dot model, and for the attributes we are just going to do order. So I'm going to set this one right now. So we want to connect to this order. So it's going to be a relationship, and in theory, an order, actually we want to set this as a one to one relationship. So that just means that an order can only have one shipping address as opposed to many, where in this foreign key value we did a foreign key, and that allows a many to one relationship. In this case, this is one. Let's do models dot one to one. So it means that, yeah, I'm repeating myself, but a shipping address can only have one order, and the other way around. So for this we are just going to pass in for the parameters, we are going to pass in the model that we want to connect to. So that's going to be order, and then we also want to do on delete. So in this case I want to show you the other option here on delete. We are going to set this to models dot cascade. So cascade will just delete it, and in this case if somebody deletes an order, I'm okay with a shipping address going with it. There is no need to save that, and we'll set null to true. And I'll also leave blank as true, so you can decide how you want to set this part up right here. Later on I might change this actually, but by default I already mentioned why I'm doing it this way. So let's give it the address here, and we'll leave these right now. city, and we'll just do postal code. So postal code here, and that's going to be a capital C right there. So camel case it and then country. And then finally we just need a shipping price and we'll add in that ID here. So we'll just do shipping price and let's paste in this ID. So we'll take in that ID that's going to be uh, this, the last parameter here. And for shipping price, this is kind of self-explanatory after this point because we have done this few times. That's going to be a decimal field, and then for our address, that's going to be a character field for the city, also a character field postal code. We'll leave that as a character field and the country. So for the string value, I'm just going to copy this. Let's see, we'll just use the address here, and so we'll just do self dot address. So we have our models. So we just followed this structure right here. So we have the user which was already built in. We have the review, the product, order item, and shipping address. So the last thing we need to do is register these and then migrate the database finally. So for the product here or for the models, we need to go into admin and I am just going to import all models. So we are just going to do star import all the models from our models.py file, and I'm going to repeat these a few times. So we'll just do review, and we also have our order, then our order item, and our shipping address, and I think that's it. So yeah, 5 models there, and now all we need to do is run that migration. So I'm going to move this up, and let's just do python manage.py make migration. So this is going to prep the migrations. It's going to create these tables right here. It's telling us what it's getting ready for and the final migration. So python manage.py migrate. So all of those migrations should be applied. So if I refresh this, I need to turn on my server. Forgot that. Just let's just see if I can find that. There we go. And now when I refresh it, there we go. So we see all of our tables and we have set up our database. And in the next video that we are going to do is we are actually going to configure our static files. and we need to configure that image field for our product. So we are going to set up our static files, and we are going to need to do this anyways when we set up React. So we are going to set up the initial structure for the static files, and then once we set up those, we can actually add this image field. So that way when we are creating a product, we can upload an image with it